All right. Miriam, welcome to my show.
Thank you.
This is
Starting
exciting.
now.
Yeah, I prepared a list. This is just reference, so I'll go to this. But I'm excited. It's been over a decade since we've last seen each other.
Yeah.
It's probably like back circa 2012, 2011.
Even earlier, because I couldn't remember if we knew each other through college or high school. I knew you didn't go to Montville High.
Yeah.
But I all those groups blend together for me. So I had to look up. You went to New London High.
Yeah. Oh, no, you did the research, huh? You did,
A little bit. I don't come in
Yeah.
blind, but because I couldn't put my finger on if I thought you played baseball or whatever for Central.
No.
So maybe that's how I knew you.
I played baseball at Mitchell.
Okay.
And I actually don't even know how we met, to be completely honest.
No, me
maybe,
neither.
maybe social media and some mutual friends.
Mutual friends,
so
for
Montville,
sure.
I'm trying to think who went to Montville that I might know.
And I graduated 09.
09, so
Yeah.
you're 2 years younger than me.
Yeah.
I mean, I played baseball with like Jesse Sutherland and those guys.
Yeah.
But I didn't like hang out with a lot of Montville people. I hung out with a lot of Waterford people. Did you have any?
I had in Waterford like Rocco, Andrew, something. Yeah, my memory is shot from back then.
Yeah,
It's crazy. I've forgotten a lot, but it's nice because the memory's in there.
Yeah.
So someone just has to trigger it.
Really? Yeah,
and
for
it'll
sure.
come out.
It's always interesting with those memories. I had a recent memory that kind of just popped out of nowhere. I'm trying to think it was probably some back like 2009, 2010. And now it's fleeting me, but they come quick and they go.
Yeah.
But it's always, I feel it just kind of comforting. Sometimes those memories are good to come back.
Yeah.
I'm a nostalgia holic. I love going back and talking to people about, do you remember these times? Do you remember that time? And I think nostalgia, and we'll get to some of the stuff because this isn't even what I wanted to talk about, but I just think nostalgia does kind of spark that happiness. Again, and not that I'm not happy, but it just kind of brings me back to remembering
it's
who you
like
are.
somewhere deep in there, just like lightens up. I followed a 90s / early 2000s page that just constantly posts commercials from back then or games, and I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
But it's really cool because if it wasn't for seeing it in front of me, I don't think I could recall that on my own.
Yeah, seriously. And that I think I might follow it, or at least pops up because now Facebook and Instagram will show things that you don't necessarily follow, but you might like it, if you will. So you'll see like the Hey Arnold's from
I watched Hey Arnold on Hulu.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it how soft we've gotten as a society, which is a whole nother thing. But
we're going to talk about
there's a lot of bullying on that show. Like, it was funny, and it wasn't, these days, if that aired, I mean, parents would have fit.
Absolutely. So last decade or so, what's going on with you? You're in Florida now.
Yeah.
When did you move? Because I think if I can remember from what I follow you on social media, you moved back for a little bit, and then you moved.
Yeah, there's been a lot of moving. So I went to Central.
Yeah.
After Central, I moved to Puerto Rico.
You moved to Puerto Rico?
Yes, with an X. And after that, between every state that I moved to, I went back to Connecticut for at least a month or 2 months. After Puerto Rico, it was Michigan, and then Texas for a long time. Houston was for 4 years, and that's where my red pill happened, and I started digging and kind of that transformation. And then I came back to Connecticut, and then I decided to move to Florida.
What year was Texas?
Texas was from 17 to 21.
17 to 21. So you were there at the beginning of COVID into all of that stuff. Now, I wasn't going to go right there, but I might as well go right there. When you say red pill, what was it that opened up your eyes?
It started slow. Well, not necessarily. Okay, go ahead.
I actually have a beginning question.
Yeah.
What perspectives change, I think, is really what I'm trying to ask, because to go red pill means you believe one way and then it shifted. What did you believe before to what, you believed afterwards?
So my red pill wasn't like what most call it, starting with politics.
Sure.
It just started with the idea that I could change my life and that it didn't have to be that miserable. It was my little sister was born 2015. That kind of really woke me up and made me feel like I don't want to be this example for her, because I wasn't leading a life that I was proud of. And so I basically shut off Netflix and started with podcasts and books and the motivational sphere. It was like one of the first guys was Gary Vee that I really, really paid attention to. And from the jump of that, it instilled the lack of victimhood mentality. And that was my base, is like, you're not a victim. You get to choose which way your life goes. It doesn't matter what mom and dad are doing or who is doing what in your life. You still have a choice. And that's why I kind of distanced myself constantly to have that room to grow. And then from just that mindset, Trump got elected during that time, I was just like everybody else, didn't like him. But there was someone I went to Central with who I always respected, and he was Puerto Rican. He loved Trump, MAGA hat and everything. I'm like, what is going on? He's trying to deport us. Like, what are you talking about? And he was like, no, don't listen to this. You know, he's done this for the farmers, and he's done this. It was the very beginning of his presidency. So again, one of my strengths is that I'm okay to change my mind. I'm okay to be wrong. I like being wrong. If anything, I just love the truth, and I don't matter what it makes me look like. For example, I was vegan for 4 years. I'm basically carnivore now. So that was a major transition for me, ego wise, to be like, I don't believe in that anymore, you know? But yeah, it was just that one guy that told me a few things about Trump, and he was like, don't believe everything you hear and just do your own research. And from there, I just started doing my own research, and it tumbled into everything else, all the conspiracies, the food, the chemicals, just everyday diet stuff that we were doing and considering normal.
There's a lot of noise out there when it comes to all of this stuff. And I too also I didn't really follow politics until 2019, right before the 2020 election, maybe 2018. My buddy David Cruz, who actually we did a little bit of an unpacking of the election from more of I try to be as not biased or one way as possible, but to just kind of give people the ideas like this is why I voted, but it was kind of hard because it's like really difficult to defend what the other side is on. But with all the noise that's out there, you know, how did you earlier on determine like, all right, which sources are more accurate than the other? I think X now kind of gives us, I don't know if you're on X, but I think X now gives us pretty much everything that you want, both sides. Like, and, you know, you can get yourself into an echo chamber of information that really pertains to your ideas. For you, when information was, I think, probably even more in 2020, was more censored in 2020 and then 2021, even probably up until now on Facebook and Instagram. What's that information seeking like for you to really find that quote unquote truth?
I really just drowned myself in it. Like I was following hundreds of accounts. I forced it to be my not echo chamber, because I also to this day follow accounts that think Trump is a plant, just like everybody else, the selected, not elected. So I like their point of views. I like to see why what they're poking realistically, what they're poking holes at, not the left's view of poking holes, which is nothing. But his real stance, his real intentions, and I just don't align with it. As of right now, I still am on Team Trump all the way. Like, I know he's not a perfect person, but I think he's brought a voice to the table that was just completely muted before. People, like, there's always Alex Joneses and people trying, but never with the microphone that Trump has. So I feel like he just brought, out of anything good that he's done, just our voices back. Like, people just having these conversations and pointing out that the left is absolutely, you know, like they said, they've left Democrats behind a long time ago. Like, there's so many Democrats were left behind with the extremes that they're going to at this point.
We grow up thinking one thing is absolute or the other is absolute, right? You know, for me, having, you know, just had a single mom and, you know, a couple of dads in and out, you know, there was, you know, faith in the household, but more so that I pray and God gives me this. But there's no absolute faith in that prayer. There's just like believing that this was going to happen. And if you did X, you would go to hell. If you did Y, you would go to heaven. As a young kid, that ends up being kind of confusing into, you know, is there God? Is there not? For the record, I believe in God. You know, that's, and we'll go a little bit into that conversation, how that happened. But I'm curious what your family was like, because I think you guys came here in the mid 90s, right? Yeah. Where did you guys come from? Because I don't know that.
Okay.
And what was that dynamic like? Because I think you had mentioned the other day recently on Instagram that you were red pilling your dad or something like that?
Yeah.
So to hear someone like you, and, you know, having to red pill your dad, you know, you probably grew up more on the other side of policy, if you will, or ideas, right? Yeah. For you, just because people hearing you say, oh, well, you voted for Trump. What was that like for you coming here and where you had come from?
So I was born in Egypt, and my family, I came to Connecticut when I was 5 because we had an uncle here. And that's why I'm also very adamant about legal immigration, because my entire family has worked really, really hard to get here and was very patient and did a lot of work, passed the test and everything to get here. So I think it's very unfair to just cross border and get a handout.
Sure.
Besides the point. But when we came, so we weren't political at all, right? It wasn't even, red pill to me is not even going from Democrat to Republican, because at the end of the day, I still think both sides have a lot of problems. And what's happening now is much deeper than people just going Republican, right? I don't think it's about Republicans at all, honestly. It's just some of those conservative values are becoming more popular. But it was hard because I was Egyptian at home and American outside the home. And so there was always a bridge between the two that I needed to be an American at school and with my friends, and then coming home, and then merging the two is always very difficult because the language barrier and everything like that. And also a lot of immigrants put America on a pedestal. Like, it's, I forgot what they call like the American dream, and they think streets are made out of gold and money just grows on trees. So we came here definitely with an American dream. My mom was already a dentist in Egypt, but when she came here, obviously that didn't count. So she had to go back to dental school. And so she started at the bottom from there and has built a really good business for herself. But it was very difficult to get my dad to understand that the government's not so great here. Like there's equal amounts of corruption here as there is in any third world Muslim country, like where we came from. So
what's that mean when you say I had to be American at school and Egyptian at home? Just
cultural stuff. Because my parents didn't Americanize very quickly. Like to this day, my dad has a very, very thick accent. Now he's been here, 25 plus years. So he's come around to a lot of things. But in the beginning, it just, speaking Arabic at home, different vibe, different energy, playfulness, even not, you kept it respectful towards your parents. Whereas, I don't know, at school, you're just like a whole different person. Not around your parents.
Right. What do you remember most about being in Egypt?
At that age, nothing. Only photos, unfortunately. But we go back to visit.
You go back. What's it like now? I mean, I've never been outside of just,
It is so different. So after the revolution, 2011, 12, they dropped that president who's been president for like 30 years, and they got a new guy, and he's been just pouring tons of money into Egypt. So there's a lot of new developments. They took areas that were just desert and built new cities, new roads, new trains, new bridges, everything. So it's becoming very modernized. And it's cool to see like Gen Z Egyptian. They're almost Egyptian American, but fully Egyptian over there. Like they speak English in most of their conversations because they have social media now. So they're a lot more connected than when I used to go growing up, where even a T-shirt like this would be considered inappropriate in public. Whereas now you got crop tops and stuff, and in the newer areas, the old Cairo, where it's the same old building, same old people, you still bundle up a little bit more. But the newer hip areas, they wear whatever they want.
So, from a political standpoint, is the newer president someone that I don't know how politics works, if there are any politics in there. Obviously there is, but I heard it today actually on the way here that politics is just really the exchange of ideas, and you're on one side of this idea or the other side of this idea. I think that where we are today, I think that people radicalize each idea, and then there's people in the middle who say, listen, I don't agree with most of the stuff, but this is where I stand. What's it like there politically? If are they more friendly?
Don't think so. I don't know. I mean, it's definitely something I wish I was more educated on. But there's only so much my brain can handle when it comes to learning this stuff. Because again, it's been a short amount of time.
That's right.
So, but I mean, they get by.
Yeah.
I think there's been more peace in Egypt for these last 10 years than they have in a very long time.
That's a good thing, right? When there's peace. I want to go to your kind of family dynamic growing up. I think that we all pull values from our families. For me, I knew that I wanted to have a family, kids, be married, the whole nine, house, all that stuff. What values did your parents instill in you that kind of define who you are today? Definitely. Even going through some of the stuff you said that you might have gone through in the last decade. Yeah.
I think unequivocally, my parents have given me hard work and determination and persistence. They worked really hard when they first got here to start from the bottom. My dad was a dishwasher, and now he's at higher management at Mohegan Sun. Same with my mom. Nice. She started at both third shifts at their jobs, multiple jobs. she was a cleaner at a nursing home. And then she went to dental school. So just seeing them never give up and just keep working hard, no matter what obstacles were in the way, they just kept going. And I definitely see that in myself from them.
When has that shown itself, like reared its head, where you said they keep going, the hard work in your life? When did you have to really dig for something like that?
For me, it was mostly about depression. Like I just saw no light at the end of the tunnel a lot of my life, especially my 20s. And I just knew that was not true.
Yeah.
I knew that if I just kept going and kept trying to build better habits and just transform altogether, that eventually everything will click and it will be a lot easier and not everything will feel like an uphill battle.
What are some of those habits that you had to build on?
I mean, first off, diet is huge. You know, like when I went vegan, I went pretty clean. Like I didn't go processed foods or anything like that. So I cut out all the fast foods, all the soda, all the unnecessary sugars and juice, and started eating very clean. And now it's the same thing, but I believe going carnivore is even harder than vegan.
Yeah. So I'm very ignorant. Obviously, I know the bunch of diets, the vegan diet. I know a lot of vegans. But the carnivore diet, is that primarily a meat diet?
Yeah. It's basically the opposite of vegan. So anything that comes from an animal.
Yeah. So
and I wouldn't do that strictly. I do believe we need fruit and carbs from fruit and fiber. But lean, I've done several tests, blood tests, and got work done like that. And right now, the best diet for me would be a very low carb, high protein.
I've heard a lot about the blood tests and the stuff that you're able to find.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm interested in doing one. I'm very scared of doing one. I'm like, oh God, like, how close am I to mortality?
No, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. I think we always fear the worst, and then we end up being like, okay, it's not as bad as I thought. But yeah, I got a bunch of stuff done down in Florida, and I don't know, not to get too into it, but yeah, low carb would be really, really good for me right now.
So, isn't the messaging different? Like too much red meat, beef, all that stuff.
Crazy.
Why is the messaging so different? My doctor is like, hey, you have high. It was funny because I looked at the blood work and it didn't look like I had high cholesterol. But he said, hey, you're teetering on the high cholesterol. I think I can give him the answer why. But he goes, it's a lot of red meat. I don't eat a lot of red meat. I eat probably 2 steaks.
Yeah,
I haven't had steak in a long time. You know, and I don't eat a lot of fried food. I mean, I'm Puerto Rican. Just, that's
hard to avoid.
Very hard to avoid. They just opened up a new spot in New London, Mi Familia. Like we go there every now and again. But I don't eat that much stuff. And for him to be like, you got to back off. And it's kind of similar to, I hope he doesn't listen to this, but even with the COVID vaccine stuff, right? So listen, I think at this point, everybody has their own opinion on it one way or the other.
Yeah.
I did some digging into the COVID. This is where I really got into politics. I think that's where my red pill came in, because I saw the hypocrisy in what we were being told, and then all the information that was coming out about the vaccine. Hopefully YouTube doesn't stop this video, but it is what it is. But that was the moment that I got red pill. So he goes, you need to get vaccinated, or you should get vaccinated. I said, sir, I've had COVID already once. I've already had the antibody test. My antibodies were through the roof. I was like, why would I do that? Oh, well, because it can wear off, blah, blah, blah. I've had COVID 3 or 4 times, and it's been a very mild cold. I know people who've had COVID, and it's knocked them out. Some had been vaccinated, some had not been vaccinated. So there was this huge hypocrisy when it comes to the messaging of X, Y, and Z. So I'll go back to the red meat. When he's like, you probably need to lay off the red meat. Why do you think that messaging is so inconsistent?
I hate to be a conspiracy theorist and kind of bulk it into that, but I genuinely don't think they want the public as healthy as we can be, and that they definitely don't want us reaching our potential. And unfortunately, I think a lot of doctors were just taught otherwise. They don't teach you, because let's be real, this is how I started eating meat again. My faith in God got stronger, and I was like, okay, he doesn't make any mistakes. So let's just for a second think that God is perfect, right? Yeah. Created in his image. Yeah. Animals are not the problem. Right. It's maybe how we're farming the animals. It's maybe what we're feeding the animals. It's how we're treating the animals that definitely adds to the quality of the meat. but nobody's talking about the canola oil. Nobody's talking about the high fructose corn syrup. And that's in everything. And then they look at your cholesterol and say, it's the meat. Like you said, I barely eat meat.
Right.
You're probably consuming a lot more canola oil than you may think, because any restaurant you go out to, 99% of the time, they're frying everything, cooking everything canola oil. All the health snacks, there's probably canola oil in it. So that, I think, one of the things that nobody wants to talk about, especially doctors, not enough science to say that, canola oil is the problem. But that's the biggest difference that we've had over the last 100 years. We went from using butter and tallow to seed oils for everything. And if you just learn the process of how seed oils are made, it doesn't even make sense that this would be healthy. It is something that is so processed. And what does process mean? It means it goes through several different chemical reactions to get to the final product. So they take the seeds, they squeeze them, they use a chemical to extract certain things from them, and then they heat them up to insane temperatures for a very long time. I think that's the biggest problem in society. I think if we cut that out completely, we would drastically see health improvements.
With the health improvements, do you believe that someone like me, right? Yeah, again, I'm probably like 215, and my diet is pretty much I have a couple, meat, chicken, greens, and pretty much that's it.
Majority home cooked foods.
Majority, unless I'm in the office. The office, we eat outside all the time. But let's just say someone who is maybe not as healthy as me. Could it turn their life in a different direction based off of the stuff that you've read, where, in their mid-30s and they were trending one way and it can completely drastically change their life in a positive direction? Yeah,
absolutely. I think if you give your body even just 3 months of consistency, you will see significant changes. And I think a lot of us try for a little bit and don't get the results, or expect the results really quickly. Whereas if that perseverance, and you just know that you will get the result eventually and just keep going, but it doesn't even take that long.
Right.
I mean, I cut out sugar, and within 2 weeks, my sleep was transformed.
Really?
I always tossed and turned. I would stay asleep, but not fully sleep. Just constantly flipping my pillow, going from this side of the bed to this side of the bed. 2 weeks of no sugar, low carb, and I was sleeping throughout the night. My circadian rhythm completely reset. I was waking up at 7 o'clock, no alarm clock. I was ready to sleep at 10 p.m. And I just felt better. And that's 2 weeks.
Is that consistent for you now? Is like you're 10 to 7, or how do you like?
That's pretty. I don't like.
I hear that a lot. That sleeping is like one of the key thing. Getting good sleep, but people don't really understand.
I refuse to believe it.
It's hard though, because like for me, we have two kids. We have another one on the way. Like it's wild to be able to sleep consistently for 6-7 hours. But I do believe that I was. Do you know what Patrick Bet-David is?
Of course.
Yeah, listen, I love PVD. It was probably a year and a half ago. He was talking about it's not about the amount of sleep you have; it's the amount of deep sleep you have. So I find myself like getting like 3 hours of, I don't know how it is, but I feel like it's deep sleep and it feels great. But I hear all the time that sleeping is probably like one of the best things that people could change for their life, but we can't because of what we're putting in our body.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, especially if you consider carbs to be sugar.
Yeah.
If you switch your perspective that way, and don't quote me on this, but in the beginning when they first started putting food labels on stuff, carbs were considered sugar because that was just basic knowledge. But basically the food companies were like, we can't actually say that there's 56 to 100 grams of sugar in this. Nobody will buy it, so they broke it up to sugars and carbs to kind of, but you add those two numbers together basically. But just think about it, you're eating bread, pasta for dinner, 8 p.m. Your body has to process that. Now you just injected your body with what is sugar? It's fuel.
Right.
So what diabetes ends up becoming is just an excessive amount of fuel that's not being used. So if you look at it like you're just overloading your car with gasoline and there's no more room for it and you're not burning it off, like athletes who are burning an insane amount of calories can easily eat a ton more because they're actually using it. But it becomes stored energy, and with nowhere to go, that's where the insulin resistance comes in. And I mean, I don't even want to know what the number of diabetes is these days, but it seems to be very, very common. And that's another thing that was part of my red pill, was like both my parents and cousins have diabetes.
Really?
And I had saw one documentary about how it's not necessarily genetic. It's like just genetic habits that we're doing. You're eating the way your parents are eating. You're probably exercising as much as your parents are exercising. And I was like, I'm not getting diabetes. I hate needles. Like there is no way that that's going to be my life.
I think my dad's a diabetic who I've never met, by the way.
I watched that episode too.
Oh, you did watch that episode? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I ended up learning some information about him through talking to his sister. I think he is. So they always ask me, like, do you have any family history of diabetic? But it's interesting that it's not about that it's not about genetics, but it's about genetic history of what people do and the behaviors. That's a fun fact that I need to store in the noggin because, I think I do believe in the hardest part is, like you said, is that it's being able to be consistent and building on the habits. And that's the hardest part, is being disciplined to start working out and eating correctly, because you revert back to the old ways. I'm pretty sure you probably read Atomic Habit. It's one of my favorite books, but there's a compound interest of doing things over and over again for the good and for the worse. For you, having been on this journey of good health, clean health, what was the hardest part for you to really make sure that you held yourself accountable?
Yeah. I love this question.
Do you?
Yeah, because I would literally want to write a book. Okay, so I've done a lot of entrepreneurial ventures since I moved to Houston. That's when it really started with Gary Vee. And currently it's dog training.
That's what you're doing now?
Yeah, in Florida. So I learned a lot about dog psychology, and it really changed my life, because I've always been high goals and accomplish them. Like I usually get anything I set my mind to. So when I set very high goals that I expect in a certain amount of time, when I'm trying to break 10, 20 years worth of bad habits, the dog training came in, because before I would say, okay, I have to work out 5 days a week for an hour long, and it can't be a minute less. You can't half-ass anything. Sure. Like, you have to fully do it. Otherwise it doesn't count. And I would do it and then fail, and then do it and then fail, but never felt proud. So with dogs, you can't do that. You have to reward small behaviors, small improvements. Right. So the next challenge for myself to go to the gym was, there are no rules. You just have to show up to the gym. You could literally go sit on a mat and stretch and walk out. You could walk around inside and walk out. You could go sit on the massage chair and walk out. It didn't matter what I did. The only rule was you have to be there.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
I got shivers.
Yeah.
But it really, really helps, because when you tell yourself, I have to do, like, for me, prior rules were like, I had to do at least 1 minute longer on the Stairmaster every single time I went to the gym. So I was up to like 45 minutes on the Stairmaster, and it just became this competitive thing about numbers and not like, what are you gaining out of this, And at the end of the day, you're accomplishing things and you're not proud. Yeah. So the new thing for me was just get there, and it just progressed into me actually loving working out now.
I absolutely, and I don't know if I'm on TikTok for the podcast. I post the videos on the podcast, and my algorithms have gone to some pretty motivational and confident stuff. That's one thing. I was very afraid. I mean, there's obviously theories about TikTok and who runs it and all that stuff, but I do like TikTok.
I love TikTok.
It's crazy. Somebody told me probably 6 months ago, you need to be on TikTok. You need to be on TikTok. You need to post your stuff. I'm like, no, China.
Yeah.
Like, no, I don't. But the algorithms and the stuff that they put in, the people that create, it's great. So one of the things that you just mentioned was this gentleman who, and I don't remember his name. I didn't even get to save it. But what he was doing was, I'm going to start working out. Very much what you said. I'm going to start working out. I'm going to get to the gym. And he would go to the gym and he wouldn't work out. And eventually what he started doing was, you know what? I told myself I'm going to go to the gym. So I'm going to go to the gym. He would sit in the parking lot. Yeah. He would just sit in the parking lot. So I went to the gym. Yeah. And eventually he would start walking to the gym. And then he'd walk around. Hey, what's going on? And then eventually he finally was like, I started hanging out with these people and being around them, and it changed my life. I started working out. I was in the best shape of my life. It sounds similar to what you just explained. That's amazing.
I hated working out. I thought it was such a chore. I hated being sore. I also thought that you had to be sore to be successful at your workout. You had to walk around like limping. But I learned also the hard way that you don't want to push too hard, especially if you're starting from nothing, you know, or starting from like a part where that has not been your life. You were never a professional athlete, and just picking it back up again. It changed my life, and I've shared it with several people at the gym too, who just looked like they were struggling being there. Just open that conversation, and I think it's helped. Like everyone that I've talked to about it, they're like, wow, that's a good way of looking at it. Because another thing is, for someone, because maybe me a few years ago would be like, yeah, that's such a waste of time though. Like I don't want, like how long is that going to take for me to actually get there? The time's going to pass anyway.
Right.
You're going to beat yourself up anyway. After 6 months of not going, you're like, wow, I still haven't gone to the gym, or I still haven't done it. You might as well put 6 months of like chipping away at it, because you will get to the point where you actually enjoy it, and it becomes your norm. When you pull up to that parking lot so many times, it becomes natural. Like you don't walk in and wonder who's looking at you or what machines do you like. You know exactly where you're going, what you're going to do. You've done it 1,000 times, so you're better and stronger at it.
Yeah. So going back to something that I wanted to ask, and I missed it when we brought up the Trump stuff, and why Florida? Why, you know, obviously, I mean, I probably can answer that question, but you know, what is it about Florida that drew you there? And you know, what do you love most about it?
Mostly the beach. I love Texas so much. I love Houston so much, and I almost always thought that I would go back there, because when I left Houston, it wasn't really by choice. It was, we had a freeze and it messed up the pipes in my building.
Gosh.
And they discounted my lease for a few months because I didn't have hot water. And at one point they said, we can't keep discounting you, and we can't fix it. So either we can get you out of your lease now, or you could stay pay the full price. And at the same time is when my mom was ready to get 2 new puppies, because hers had passed like a year and a half prior. And that's how it all tumbled together, of the dog, learning about dog psychology, because I moved home basically to train these dogs to raise them. That was supposed to be 4 months, ended up being a year and a half. And during that time, I just wanted to be near the beach more than anything. And I told myself, why don't you check it out? Because you can always go back to Houston. You know what Houston's like. And then what triggered Clearwater, Florida, was my stepdad was in Connecticut visiting, but he had previously moved to Florida, ex-stepdad. He had previously moved to Clearwater, but he was visiting Connecticut. He said, why don't you go check out Clearwater in my apartment? You can stay for a couple weeks. I won't be there. Went down there. I already knew a bunch of people from a skate group, so I bunch of Tampa kids. So I hung out with them, put out the word that I was looking for a roommate, because Florida, you can't live by yourself. These prices. I was not willing to pay $2,000.
My best friend Dave, who I just mentioned about the politics episode that we did, he lives in Miami. His condo was deemed structurally unsound, so he's been living here for some time. Not living here. He's just here because he can work remote and stuff like that. So, but his thing is, you know, everything's expensive over there. And I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. I mean, Connecticut's expensive too. It's not the cheapest place in the world, but at least in Florida, it's expensive, and you got a lot more. And I love Connecticut. I love the hills and trees and the lakes and everything. I think it's beautiful. But I also like to be out and about. You know, I like to be at parks and just be outdoors. And Florida had a lot more of that, and just being access to the ocean. I think the ocean is just so healing, and just being there on any bad day will make it 100 times better.
So you rollerblade a lot. Have you always?
No. I mean, I have flashbacks of doing it as a kid, but definitely not something like my parents would even remember. And I picked it up because I was in Goodwill flipping, like Gary Vee told me, and I came across a pair of great skates that were my size, and I'd never find anything my size, so I put them on and I enjoyed them, and then I broke my wrist like 2 weeks later. Because again, it's like you think I could just do anything. And but I've loved it ever since.
That's awesome. So you mentioned healing. I want to know a little bit about your relationship with God, and you know, that journey and what that's been like, and what challenges that's brought you, like, and what has your relationship with God brought out the most in you. You know, woman of faith. You know, I have tended over my first 40-something episodes to be primarily about business and people's journey and all that stuff, but never went into the nitty-gritty of the spiritual battles that we all go through. Because not everybody believes in that they're going through a spiritual battle. I see things differently. That's okay. I'm never here to be like, you have to think like me and all that stuff. But I like the opportunity to talk to people about this stuff. And tomorrow I'm going to be meeting with a really good friend of mine, somebody I grew up with, who's actually an evangelist, and he goes to different countries and he ministers, and we're going to talk. And I can't wait to have that conversation and put it out. Like, it's just something that's become more of a passion. So I'm interested in your journey with this, and how far does it go back to?
Well, I grew up Christian. My family is Coptic Orthodox, so it was one of those very strict Christian churches where, you know, women on the right side, men on the left, formal clothes, cover your hair, communion and everything was very strict and organized. So I've always had that faith in the back of my head, and just through that. But after starting to go down all the rabbit holes of the conspiracies and everything, I almost pushed religion away completely, because I was like, everything's a scam basically, and everything we believe is like not actually what it is. So I looked at it as another form of just brainwashing in a way.
Indoctrination.
Yeah, and I went down that path of like source energy and blah, 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 and the universe and all that. And it just never sat right with me. I think that's the darkest it's ever been for me, like mentally and spiritually. Just that there's not actually anything legit. Like, we don't know. Like, you don't know. But slowly but surely, I feel like the Holy Spirit was just like pulling me back. 'Cause I was baptized as a baby. So I definitely think that just all that spiritual energy around you does something, you know, even if you don't believe it. We can measure frequency.
Sure.
So we can measure the frequency of the earth, of whatever. And those are real. Like, there's high frequency and low frequency. So I think just having that embedded in the back of my mind, that I had a protector, played out through my entire life. And the brief period that I strayed from it was the most depressed I'd ever been, with just no answers. And I slowly started coming back. Someone put me onto the book, Jesus Calling. And it was a really good way for a beginner to kind of get into Christianity and what God is. Because I always tell people, God didn't burn you, or like Jesus didn't burn you, someone at church did, you know, or like the church did. So don't ever compare Jesus to the church, because I think majority of churches are not a good representation of what Jesus actually is and represents. But diving deeper into that, reading the scripture for myself, doing more podcast style listening to information helped me a lot, because at the end of the day, if we can't, well, there's plenty of stuff that's been proven, but I have a hard time believing the crazy stories, you know, like he resurrected, or he, you know, the miracles and all that stuff, but there's witnesses. So that's been the hardest part, is the logical part of my brain to like really deeply believe everything. But it also says in the Bible that if you keep searching, you'll find me. So that's what I'm doing. I just keep searching. I keep praying. I keep praying for stronger faith. I keep praying for just deeper connection with him. And I've definitely had very weird spiritual connections. And those instances, although they're few, have reminded me that it's real. Like I mean, if you just looking at the moon, when in a full moon, you zoom in and you get the exposure down, you can really see. It's just like someone created that,
for sure.
And I also this quote that was like, you see a painting or an old building and you don't question whether there's a creator or not. Just because you don't know them, or there's no proof of them, the creation is the proof. So
there's a really good episode. Ben Shapiro had Jordan Peterson on. And Jordan Peterson just recently wrote a book called We Who Wrestle with God. And he goes, to question whether or not God is real is to be like, is this table is real, or is 2 + 2 = 4? You know, God is everything seen and not seen. So how could we try to make a material fact of this? My faith started when I was probably 16. Like you, I was baptized as a young boy. I was probably 6 months, 7 months, maybe something like that, maybe a little bit less, younger than that. But I didn't really grow up spiritual. But you know, something that you just said that I never really thought about is being baptized that young. There's some spiritual elements, and I think maybe that's why, for me, I have these urges and fires to come back to God, and more so now than I had ever before. So fast forward to 16, 17 years old, I went to Miracle Temple Church in New London, and mainly went to that church because of a professional baseball player who played in Major League Baseball player, was alumni of New London High School, and it's like, oh, I get to hang out with him and go to church. But that was how I got drawn in. Fast forward to when I was like 17, 18, 19, I'm struggling with the faith a little bit because of, like I said, you know, there's these binary options. If you do this, you go to hell. If you do this, you go to heaven. And I struggle with that. I'm like, man, I'm 19 years old. I want to, you know, girls, drinks, this, that, you know, you struggle with the distractions of what the world is. I had this moment in 2011 where one of my good friends who we took different paths. He was always in and out of jail, but he was one of my brothers. Like, we really looked out for him. My mom, my family, like when he had troubles, he'd come live with us. When he moved here from Puerto Rico, I was one of his first friends. He died in a car accident. at 2011, and I said, man, and that was the time that I started questioning the faith a little bit. And I remember just feeling like they asked me to speak at his funeral, which I did. I can't remember what I said, but I remember speaking. But I just remember kind of getting hardened a little bit to the faith. And then you couple that with what I thought I was going to do, obviously being someone who believed and experienced at a young age, 16, 17, 18 years old, experience what belief can really do for you as an individual, and saying, God, I'm putting this in your hands. Let your will be done. What's going to happen is going to happen. And really experiencing some real, like, what I thought were supernatural instances at that time. But I try to leverage that. What I want to say psychologically in my head was, anything that I think I can do, God is going to provide for me. Well, I thought I was going to play professional baseball. And I was so attached to that thought and idea that I was going to play professional baseball. And when it didn't happen, I think my faith went in a different direction. But that faith has always been somewhere that's been kind of just underlying in tone. And I would always read a scripture here and there and come across things that really move me. Well, fast forward now in 2024, I'm at a point where I'm reading this book called Conversations with God by, his name is Neil Donald Walsh. It's a 3-part series. I'm taking my time with this book because it's really thought-provoking. So you mentioned earlier, like, we are made in his image. He basically is telling the author, who's Neil, who's having this conversation with him, that, hey, listen, I am who I am. I'm everything, like I said, everything and nothing at the same time. If I can't come to people and be like, show up as a person, because then that's going to diminish the value of who I am. God, what did he say? I have it written down. I wrote it down and it's not on this paper. I'll get back to my point. The concept of the book, it really is almost as if God is really speaking to us. I definitely advise you just do a little bit of research on it, because I don't know what this person's beliefs are or anything like that, but I'm just finding it really comforting in that how God is just saying, listen, I made you in my image, and this is only like in the first chapter of the book. It's not sequential to like how the Bible is, but I made you in my image, after my likeness. So I always thought like, oh, when I look at Mariam, I'm looking at God. But then the way he breaks it down is as if, he sent Christ down to die for the sins and all that stuff. But I also needed to experience the world through us, through you. And I was sitting there like, oh my goodness, like, obviously I'm not the uppercase God, right? But are we in this world and in this space for his experiment, for his joy? So anyway, it's a thought-provoking book. I'm only like 30 pages into it. And I just, it kind of got me back into my seeking and searching more than I ever have. And it's tough because, not everybody around me believes that way. Not my, some people in the family do, some people in the family don't. And it's okay, but it's now, I think it's my, I don't say duty. One thing I'm not going to ever do is push my thoughts onto people, but I want people to see what God can do through me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think that's part of his purpose too, is that you don't push things on people, but you become such an example that they're almost magnetized to why and how. And I've struggled a lot too with the sins and like we're going to heaven or not going to heaven for a long time. Because there's several Bible verses that say in faith alone, you are saved. Right. Which is hard because you could have faith, but what does that even mean? Like how deeply you believe, So
it's interesting because I actually just read that in the book of Romans where Abraham, because of his faithfulness, he was deemed righteous in the eyes of God. So all he had to do was be faithful. We don't have to do any work. We don't have to do anything to get into the kingdom, if you will. But the thing that in this book that I'm reading is that we have grown up on these theological ideas or mythology of, these ideas, whether heaven or hell, like who is there to determine these? It's idea that's based off of fear.
And that's why I strayed from religion.
Right.
That's what kind of made me feel like,
right.
you know, you got to be like this and do this. Right. And then the more that I researched myself and read the scripture more, it was like your deeds will never, you can never create enough good deeds. You cannot feed enough homeless people. You cannot save the world to get into heaven.
Yeah.
Or your deeds will never, ever equate to anything in God's eyes. It's your faithfulness.
The idea is really, I think that we are him. Yeah. Not him, but we are him, if that makes sense. He goes in the book, how can you be, how can you choose to have the life you have, but you have no choice? And how could you be my offspring, but you're really not? And it just brought me back to the book of Genesis, that we are made in his image, after his likeness. So I really, and I'm seeing it now, and I can't wait to talk to my friend about it tomorrow, but I'm seeing it now. It seems like we're coming closer in an aspect as a country. Absolutely. I think. But also there's a segment of going the other direction. And it sounds like a conundrum that, you know, we just said that again closer, but there's definitely, I can understand why it's a spiritual warfare that people are going through, or that we are going through and that we see. I want to go to, because we got a couple of things that I want to ask. There's a couple of things I want to ask you. We didn't talk too much about politics, but I'm really interested in your thoughts about, obviously, what just happened with the election, and now we have Trump. We both know, you know, we're both on the same side of the aisle. I probably wouldn't. It's my first time voting. I never.
Second time for me.
I didn't vote in 2020. I didn't vote in 16. I didn't vote in 12. I would have voted for him in 2020. I had some stuff going on that I think my son was sick, or for some reason I couldn't get to the ballots. I think we were moving or whatever. 2016, I didn't even follow politics. I didn't get in, so I did not I don't care Hillary, Trump, or whatever. Yeah. Once you're sucked in, you're sucked in. That's one thing with this stuff. It. You cannot unsee it.
I tried for a long time.
Yeah, it's very tough. But I'm interested on your thoughts on, and we don't have to get too deep into the abortion or anything like that. But the big thing that I saw the day after the election, and very quick in and out, these news cycles come and go. They happen, they're gone, people don't talk about it, but it'll come back up. I know it's going to come back up. But as a woman, I'm really curious on your thoughts when people are advocating for women's rights. And, well, there's women's rights are going to get taken away, or women's rights are at risk of X, Y, and Z. Obviously, we know what the underlying tone of that is, that being the overturn of Roe v. Wade in 2022, right? The big thing with that, actually, that I read recently, is that abortions are up more than they were even since that was enacted. As a woman who voted for Trump, along with 30 million other women, if you want to share where you stand on some of those issues, feel free to do so. But I'm just curious more so on the framework or the frame of reference that you have, particularly regarding the issues that the left might throw out and say, hey, you shouldn't have voted for him because you're at risk. And what the right says, hey, what are you even talking about? We're just leaving it up to the states.
Yeah. I mean, I'm no political expert, but it seems to me that Roe v. Wade was they tried to get it into the state's hands for decades, both Democrats and Republicans, and they never got, the votes to do it. Wasn't this a unanimous vote? It was I think every single person voted to give it in the hands of the states. And then they say, okay, it's the Trump ban. Trump is on video saying, and I agree, he says he's absolutely repulsed by it, the idea of it. He doesn't agree with it, but he thinks that there should be a choice. And even as a Christian, I don't agree with it. I don't believe in it. But God gave you free will. Right. You go do whatever you want to do. Right. That's between you and God, and you and your spirits and stuff. So I'm not going to tell somebody don't do it. Right. I would never do it. I would never advise my friends to do it or my loved ones to do it. But again, there's free will, and when it got into the states' hands, some states went a lot more liberal with it. Some states went a lot more conservative with it. I feel like most of the states that went very conservative with it, there's not a demographic for that anyway in that area. The people of the state voted this way.
See, that's what I'd be saying.
So it's like, you live in California. What are you worried about?
Right.
You know, like you
Right.
live in New York or like any other blue state.
Right.
That nothing is changing.
Right.
If any, and it just bothers me the amount of misinformation calling it the Trump ban. Neither Trump or Kamala could have done anything about it. It's in the hands of the states.
Right.
When it became in the hands of the states, there were laws. I forgot what they're called, but they're basically on the back burner until the big laws change, so the little law can come into action immediately after. So there were several states that went, more strict with it, and several states that were ready to go more liberal with it. And I just feel like there's so many places to live in this country. Live where it politically feels right to you.
That's
you know,
right.
like some places are extremely Democrat, and some places are extremely liberal.
Right.
I mean, conservative.
And, and that's the beauty of our country, right? Going back to the idea of politics, or there's just the exchange of ideas of what you believe and what you don't believe in. And I think, unfortunately, social media has exacerbated what people believe in and people don't believe in.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a specific individual go from being a Christian to being an atheist right now, and throwing all this stuff about Project 2025 and Trump's this, the tariffs, all that stuff. And I think a lot of it is because of the information that one consumes. But the ideas, ultimately, we don't have to share the same ideas. Alex Hormozy he came out and did this 17-minute episode on his podcast where he said, listen, I sat down with someone who I have a really good relationship with, and I said, hey, listen, let's write down these exchange of ideas. Let's write down like 20 to 25 different ideas. And then at the end of it, let's see who we voted for. They both voted for differently, but what was the same was the ideas on paper minus one or two things. So it just shows that we have been divided based off of specific narratives that the media is telling us, the social media, and the influence that has. Yeah. And it's scary. It's scary, because who knows what that's going to continue to do. I think fortunately, I think X and what Elon's doing is going to save a lot of that, minus the people that have left X, like Joy Reid and all those people, all the liberals who are just like, oh, I'm just going to get off X because, they're
Which
so
I still
tribal.
open it. I see a ton of liberal stuff.
I see a ton of liberal stuff.
You would think it would be an echo chamber of just, I see Trump hating stuff all day. And I love it because
of course.
I don't want to be an echo chamber. Like I want to hear what the other side is saying.
Right.
Sometimes they have a point,
Right.
Like I would love to hear their point of view.
Right.
But I think I was never a big fan of Elon because I don't want the brain chips and the robots taking over, and I definitely push against that. But he's changed the projection of this country, honestly, with what he did. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's amazing what he did.
The fact that they deleted Trump off Twitter is insane. It's
insane.
Insane.
Like how?
That's wild.
And not just Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
Wild.
That's why he started the Truth Social and all that stuff.
So crazy.
TDS is a real thing. I think it's a real thing.
And the power behind it is so scary.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. The thing is too, I had this thought on my way here, is that most people, I would say most people I know and I talk to outside of a select few, don't follow politics, but they follow an idea. And the idea, unfortunately, happens to fall on one side of the aisle when it comes to politics. So like Hormozy said, is that we voted two different ways, but we have 30 of the same ideas. Yeah. Then that just creates this kind of tribal mentality of, oh, well, if you voted for this person, I'm going to write you off.
Teams.
I saw this during when Trump was elected the next day. How people are like, you don't befriend me if you voted for him and blah, blah, blah. He's racist and stuff like that. Delete me on Facebook now, or put this in the comments so I can delete you. And it's disrespect because, you guys don't understand what this is going to happen to our children. Listen, I'm going to say, just because of my lack of knowledge on the political landscape, I hope that my vote, one, it didn't matter in Connecticut because we were blue anyway. But I hope that my belief in Trump and what he's doing, I think it's going to go the right way. I do think that we eventually, we're going to find out one way or the other who was right. I do think he's going to clean up. I do think we're going to have some sort of temporary pain. I think that's just probably going to be natural for, even let's just say the economy's booming. I think the economy's booming on some inflated numbers of what I follow. There's a lot of credit card debt out there. Obviously, interest rates are high and whatnot. But I think that there's good ideas from that side. You got Vivek. I love Vivek. Obviously you got Elon, his cabinet. I love Tulsi. Yeah. I think that there are people who want limited government interference, and the left wants government interference.
And what's crazy is like all the underdogs all of a sudden won. Like Tulsi,
Crazy.
Tulsi wanted, ran for president.
Yeah.
And as soon as she beat any of them in a debate, they called her a Russian spy. And it's so funny that like all the people that have been absolutely mutilated by the Democratic Party, who were Democrats and stood for what it was supposed to be, now they're on top, and now they're going to be the boss. And I'm not a blind Trump supporter in the sense of like I think he's going to fix everything. Yeah. I will wait and see exactly what he does. I don't like. For a little while, I was scared that RFK might not even get in after he won. You know, like I didn't know if that was going to be or how much power he actually had. And then I also don't know the steps to approving these people. Is there a vote on that?
Yeah.
Like the Matt Gaetz thing, like doesn't he have to be? I don't know. Yeah. So I can't wait to see, though. I mean, the statements he's made already have been amazing.
Did you see what The View had to come out and say about Matt Gaetz yesterday?
Yeah.
I love that. And
her face doing it
she
was hilarious.
Looked so mad.
And they also want to get more Trump voices on there because I think I'm glad. I am so happy that we lost in 2020 because it provided so much prep time. One, for the country to see how far the Democrats were willing to go with just even having, I've been to Planet Fitness here in Norwich, and there was a trans man in the locker room. Yeah. Like just allowing people to get a taste of what we're talking about is like, okay, they're going too far.
The crazy part about just even that idea right there, that listen, I'll say this. The first thing that I'm always, till my son's 4, my daughter's 2, I'm having another daughter. The number one thing is treat people how you want to be treated. I'm never going to tell them to look at the person for who they are, whatever it is. Right. But having a trans man in a woman's bathroom is wrong, right? Whether there's intention to just use it as a female or maybe bad intention to what we saw back in, I think it was 21 or 22 in Vermont, where there was a trans boy using a girl's bathroom and ended up raping her in the bathroom.
Yeah, and it happens in jail cells too.
Yeah, so there's something fundamentally wrong with saying, hey, this is allowed to happen in... It's crazy. So it's very far left. So to your point, I do think that having this transform, movement in the last 4 years, we were gaslit, not just by social media, but by the administration, the doctors,
calling us literally a threat to like human health.
Crazy. It was so wild, and people don't, the people who don't agree with it, but voted Democrat or voted left, they just sweep it under the rug like it just never happened. Yeah. And I'm kind of just like, fuck yeah, this is. I'm so happy this is going on. And again, I hope that this is a positive direction for our country. I don't know the answer to it, but what I do know is that over the last 4 years, obviously the economy is good. Sure, the stock market's good. It's being driven by 7 stocks. But what's not great is inflation, the compound effect that's happened. I've seen that the poverty gap is getting wider. People are, having a harder time pay their rents and pay their utility bills and put food on the table. I have people in my family who are struggling with that, who didn't struggle the previous 4 years. Who actually didn't struggle the previous 4 years before that. When I was 22 or 21, I remember gas prices being $5. Listen, there's always going to be this volatility when it comes to stuff like that. But what I specifically saw that mattered most to me in this last 4 years was just garbage, for lack of a better term. Yeah. So we have a few minutes here. I want to talk about something that I saw yesterday, and we'll wrap up with this. What's the significance of that red bike for your mom? Because she seems so happy.
She's getting ready to retire. Okay. And I've helped her get her health in check. She's gotten off several medications and now is on vitamins. So she's really adamant about aging gracefully, and the next step for her is to exercise when she sells her office. So we thought this would be a good start because she's got the puppies in the back too, and a tricycle is already not very easy to ride. We got a lot of hills in my neighborhood, so I thought it would be a nice way to introduce her to some more physical exercise and getting the dogs out. And the red is because she has a red car, and she's always leased her cars. And this car is the first one she's bought after the lease was over, so it's her forever car for the next 10 years at least. and it's red. So they match perfectly.
Oh, she seems so happy and excited about that.
Yeah, it was her birthday Monday.
You said Monday? Yeah. And she's retiring when?
Her office is on the market whenever it sells.
Wow.
She'll do part-time after. She's a dentist. I don't know if I mentioned that. She tore my teeth apart yesterday. She says I'm her worst patient that she's ever had because it hurts.
Oh gosh.
I'm just like, dude, this hurt. She's like, Mariam, I go so much harder on my patients and not one peep. And I'm sitting there like, stop. But I have great teeth, so she doesn't need to do much. But cleaning every year or so, it's still painful.
Awesome. Well, this was a lot lot of fun.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too.
Probably going to get a little bit of backlash here and there from this. I don't care.
I remember in one of the episodes that I watched last night, you're like, I don't care about offending people. Like, yeah, we're going to get along real well. Yeah. I do care. You know, like, I do care. But at the end of the day, if we're talking about blatant facts here, like, it is what it is.
And again, it's not that I don't care about offending people. Give me something, and I say this. I said this with David. I'm going to say this again. Give me something to work with, right? If you're telling me Trump's a racist, don't just say Trump's a racist because of you saw something in the media or something that happened 20 years. Correct. If my lack of knowledge about certain things that are scientific and most of it is just outrage. It's not about anything factual. Most people will still go to mainstream and they'll just Google and they'll read 3 or 4 things that are most likely going to be populated by the ABCs, the CNNs, the NBCs, the MSNBCs, and it's all going to say the same thing. So when it comes to offending people, I don't mean to offend you with what, right? I'm not trying to offend you with what I'm saying. Hear me out. And then if you want to talk, come on my show.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
The definition of offended has changed significantly because it's not about, I'm not calling you names or calling you out your name or anything. That's offensive. Right. But my opinions alone offend you. Right. You know, like my existence, my stance.
And we should have never been there.
Yeah.
Right. We should have never gotten to where people's opinions are different and they offend you.
Because it's become identity politics at this point. So like your like being on the side identifies as a bigot, basically. You're not open to, and that's what's so misunderstood. It's like, do whatever you want.
Do whatever you want.
Leave the children alone.
Leave the children alone. That's it.
Let's keep the bathrooms as they are.
That's it.
And that's it.
That's
you go be trans all day.
Yeah. Do whatever you want.
Everybody.
Leave the kids alone.
Leave kids alone.
Keep it out of the schools.
Keep the books. That's a whole nother.
And people don't think it's true.
No,
people do not think it's true, but it's true.
You saw my sister came home with a book about 2 male penguins. This was when she was 5, so she's still younger. 2 male penguins that found an egg and this is a 5-year-old book. Very simple, like 1 sentence on each page type of book. They found an egg. They wanted to raise it together, and that was the story. And that's when I told my dad about it a few years ago. He's like, nah, like that. They would never do that. That's absurd. Found it on an Egyptian talk show on Facebook. Of course, like he's Egyptian, he like listens a little bit harder. And he's like, Americans are introducing homosexuality in schools. They're trying to get the children to switch genders. And my dad was like, Mariam, you were right. I was like, yeah I know.
Oh my God.
So it's crazy. And I mean, I've, a ton of this stuff comes through my feed, but all the...
And just for a disclaimer, this isn't transphobic or homophobic.
Right.
This isn't, this is just... Let the kids be kids and let them decide when they're adults.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
And not for nothing, the state, and this is what I do love. I was watching an interview with Betsy DeVos, the former Secretary of Education. And ultimately what it is when it comes to these, the Department of Education, is the Department of Education soaks up all the money and gives it to the people without resources to the children. And she's just like, we want to give back and give more to the children. We don't want the state involved in the development of the children. We want the parents to be involved in the development of their of the children. And I truly agree with that. My wife's a teacher, and I think she's one of the best. I mean, she's really good at what she does. And, she's not as political or again, I don't like to think of someone I'm not political, but I'm someone who likes politics and very amateurly understanding what's going on. I'm not even on the...
I wouldn't say that. You know a lot more than a lot of people.
Yeah, but the state basically dictating what's happening to the children. I don't agree with that. And that's all I said. Listen, Department of Education, if we can flow money freely to schools and to the parents' hands for them to choose what curriculum and what their kids are going to do. Because one thing I thought about during this interview was not every child is going to learn the same way. So why not give them the opportunity to choose?
Yeah.
Why not take the money away from the top and put it in, bring it back to the States and let the parents have access to certain different things. So it might not be as easy as that, but I just don't like that the state is involved. And that's what allowing these books to be in the school strikes me as is
crazy.
And there's obviously a conspiracy behind that. It's just, I do think it's an attempt to, destroy the nuclear family.
Yeah.
And, again, that's just my opinion. No offense.
It's facts. No, unfortunately, it is facts.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it's doing. And if you listen to any town hall, parents are enraged about this.
No one's listening to it. No one's listening to those town halls.
That stuff's not getting views.
Never.
Yeah.
Because no one's going to it. No one's seeking it out. And people are distracted. Listen, reasonably so. Listen, I watch football on Sundays. I have a beer or two on Sundays while watching it. Maybe more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People are distracted and people do need these distractions to do things. Like I bowl on Monday nights with my guys. I play baseball on the side. I need the distractions for some of these things. But I do think it's important to pay attention to. So this was fun.
Yeah,
I think maybe when you come back in January, come back on, we could talk the ADHD stuff and maybe dive into that a little bit. Yeah. But anything you got for me?
Thank you so much for having me. This was great. I can't wait to come back.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks.